Camilla here from Decodable Readers Australia. Today we begin our second episode in our new series all about data. And during the next couple of episodes, we're going to go through some data collection tools, how to analyze that data, and most importantly, how to respond to that data so that you are making sure that you're meeting the needs of your students. Now, we will go through a phonemic awareness assessment as well as our word decoding and Sparkle Kit assessment. But before we do, I just want to give you an example of a conversation that I had a few years back in regards to a parent who had multiple children at the school, and her older children went through a whole language-based approach to teaching reading. And then I was the classroom teacher of her third child, and I'd only just begun my science of reading journey. And this is the conversation that we had. She wanted to know what benchmarking level her child was at. Now, this is probably a common question that parents ask, especially if they've had children go through schools that provide an education that is whole language and uses benchmarking. However, in this case, her child had some learning difficulties, and the benchmarking system just didn't allow the deep analysis of that student's learning and then how to respond. Yes, it gave us a number, and we could identify that that number was significantly lower than what the year level expectations were. So we knew that there was something that wasn't quite right. And that's where it takes us to those types of assessments. Back in the day, those benchmarking assessments really didn't allow for a deep analysis of the deficits a child is having, and most importantly, like I say, how to respond to those errors and those deficits. Now, this led me on my science of reading journey. I needed to dig really deep to find out where those deficits were, what was actually happening, whether I needed to seek further additional support with external agencies, or whether there was some classroom practices that I needed to embed into my teaching practice to cater for that child. We started with oral language just to ensure that the receptive and expressive language was appropriate for the age level, and at that stage I used the Renfrew language scales assessment, and it came out all clear. So we knew that language wasn't an issue at that stage. Now, the next port of call was actually phonemic awareness, because we know that phonemic awareness is the foundational skill of reading. That's the ability to be able to blend and segment and manipulate individual sounds in spoken words. So before we even got to the phonics, we needed to see what was happening at a phoneme level. And we did some phonemic awareness assessments. From there, we could identify that some of the segmenting and blending orally needed some work. So that was the first thing that we identified. Then, when we went to the next step, that phonics, we did a full analysis of the letter sound correspondence knowledge for that year level. It was a foundational year level. So we're looking at those alphabet sounds, the beginning or basic code. And sure enough, there were some deficits there, which meant that that letter sound correspondence knowledge was not to a level of automaticity, and therefore applying that knowledge to word level, that blending and segmenting just wasn't there. So this really gave us good data to work with to identify where those gaps were and to plan a teaching sequence and a plan of action moving forward in order to get that child reading. Now, while we were going through these stages of assessment, the school also made that transition to the science of reading and invested in decodable books. So this new teaching practice aligned with the text that we could use to ensure that this child was getting the necessary practices that they needed. So that leads us to this conversation here today. What sort of assessments are you using? We're going to show you some that we provide here at Decodable Readers Australia, and hopefully this will prompt a decision to make that transition from a benchmarking number to more skills-based and understanding and identifying gaps in skills rather than at a specific level. Let's begin at phonemic awareness. That's that ability to be able to identify and manipulate sounds in spoken words. Now, our Tune into the Sounds of Reading kit is a resource for the classroom to really develop and practice those skills. It's heavily weighted in phonemic awareness. It has some phonological awareness activities, but the majority of the activities are around phonemic awareness. Now, this kit actually comes with a free downloadable assessment, and this is just a generic screener to identify the basic skills and see where there may be some gaps. Now, let's cross over to my computer and have a look at the screener and how to analyze that data, and like I always say, most importantly, how to respond to data once you've collected the data. Once you've implemented the Phonemic Awareness Screener one-on-one with students, it's important to then mark their work and transfer that data across to your Phonemic Awareness data collection record. This record will really help you analyse and understand not only student by student, but your whole class. And this is where you can then target the teaching through intervention groups or whole class. So let's have a look at this record sheet. Firstly, across the top are the phonemic awareness skills, and they have been broken down into their individual levels that match our Tune into the Sounds of Reading kit. Now, going down the side are all the students, and for this example, we've just named them student A, B, C, and so on. Now, when we have marked it, I have used a tick. A tick represents that the student got 3 out of 3 in each skill. I have represented errors as a dot. If a student hasn't got 3 out of 3, I have placed a dot, and I like to highlight where those dots are because it can really help you see at first glance where the gaps in their learning are. If we have a look here in our first skill, this is the phoneme isolation skill. We can see there's 6 students that really haven't got this skill and require further intervention or further practice and maybe a little bit more explicit teaching. That's when we can grab the kit and go straight to the phoneme isolation, pull out those 6 kids and do a little bit more, especially on end sounds and middle sounds. If we move on, we can see that majority of the class are missing phoneme segmentation, so phoneme segmenting at level 2. That's when they're segmenting 4 to 5 sounds. So once again, I could possibly grab my kit and do a whole class practice drill based on 4 and 5, just to give more practice, as well as explicitly teaching those. Now, if we have a look over here, it looks like from this class data, phoneme substitution, that's that manipulation of individual sounds, first sounds, end sounds, and middle sounds. That looks like that the majority of the class require further consolidation in those skills as well. So that might become some of the whole class drill and practice time. Now we can also have a look at individual students. If we have an extra set of hands like a parent, a teacher aide, or any helpers in the classroom, we can pull out a student one-on-one and just focus on where those gaps are and use our Tune into Sounds kit according to the skills that those students need further practice with. Now, if you would like to learn more about this individual resource, head to Series 4, where we unpack every different skill that's incorporated in this valuable resource that is quite flexible in responding to student data. Next, we're going to have a look at our Sparkle kit. This is the Systematic Phonics and Reading Knowledge Leveled Evaluation. This evaluation kit is a great way to identify those skills and that reading knowledge to see where those gaps are and how to respond to those gaps. So I'm going to take you through some of the assessments, then show you our data collection tool and how you would analyze the data as you collect it. Now, this evaluation tool matches our decodable readers. However, in saying that, because it is skills-based and knowledge-based, even if you don't have our decodable readers, you'll be able to gather enough data to be able to identify the gaps in your students' learning and be able to respond to that data accordingly. Now, it does marry up very well with our decodable readers, so if you already have the decodable readers, this is a great tool that matches and responds using that resource. So let's dive in and have a look. The first data collection that we're going to have a look at is our letter sound correspondence knowledge. Now, in each level there are a sound set, those graphemes and phonemes and the correspondences between the two. So I'm just going to grab level 1 here. We have a little book for our students to read from, and we have our recording sheet here. Now, you can get these downloaded. Once you purchase the kit, they come as a digital file so that you can print rather than photocopying. Now, our student opens up to the first book and we have our letters here. Now, they have to say the matching sounds that those letters would be representing. You can see here that we assess both lowercase and uppercase, and it's really important that students say the sounds that they represent. As the student is reading those letter sound correspondences, you're marking on the teacher record sheet. Some teachers like to put that data straight into their digital recording spreadsheet. So let's jump across and have a look at how this data is entered and then how we can analyze that data based on letter sound correspondences. You can see here, this is our data collection on our Excel spreadsheet. It's all set up for you in the download. And as you enter the data of yes, achieved, or no, hasn't quite got it, the boxes turn the color. So red is no, they haven't achieved. That's that stop, let's try again. Or the green is yes. Now you can see here, I'm just going to go to this one. As I press N and across, it's going to change it. Or I can press Y and it's changing it. And it automatically totals the scores for you. Once you've entered all of your students, and this is just a mock-up class, you can then analyze your data. So you can see here, you can analyze from individual students going along this way. So this student has quite a few gaps in their SATPIN knowledge. Or you can actually have a look down this way. If you need to do an explicit small group lesson on the sound, the short A sound, you know which students to grab to do that explicit teaching. There's no point doing, for example, a whole class on the T sound once again, because most of the class, in fact all of the class except for one student has it. So that might end up being a student that you put into your tier 2 intervention group and target those sounds and those gaps that that student has. Next is the application of that knowledge in word blending, and this is quite systematic. We're starting off really easy with our VC words, that's our vowel consonants. This is in level 1, and we see how they go blending 2 sounds together. Then we move to 3 sounds together in real words. Now you'll also find in many of our levels the nonsense words. Now this is just to ensure that they have that letter sound correspondence and they're blending words in an unfamiliar word, just in case they've learnt some of those words by whole. It's really important that students know that part to whole so that when they come to unfamiliar words, they're able to blend the letter sound correspondences together. So let's jump in and have a look at how we would record this data and analyze this data. You can see in this next section, this is the reading at VC level, that's vowel consonant level. And those students that had gaps in their letter sound correspondence knowledge obviously are unable to blend 2 sounds together. Now you can enter your data in here. You do give those students a go, but once they get a 0 or they come out red, that's where you actually have to stop. There's no point continuing the assessment. If they can't blend 2 sounds together, they certainly will not be able to blend 3 sounds together. From here, you can really analyse that data and group students that require more assistance in the blending of VC words. Now, going back to the previous data, we need to make sure that they have that letter sound correspondence knowledge first. Once we've got success there, we can move them on to that VC, that vowel consonant blending, and from there to our CVC words. You can see here the students that are able to blend 3 sounds together can also apply that at the nonsense word level. And then we move up into those 4 sound words as well. And you can see by looking at the data as you've entered it, what students are able to do CVC, but are having a little bit more trouble at that CCVC level. So consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. If students are tracking really well, we can move right up into more difficult words, and that means they have more sounds to blend. Now, in our upper levels, we even move to multisyllabic words to see how far students can blend using the letter sound correspondences that they know. And finally, in the screener, we do a little assessment just to see whether they know those high frequency words that will appear in their reading evaluation. Once you've gathered the data on the evaluation, and you can see students are actually tracking quite well with their skills and knowledge at letter sound level and word level, you can then assess their application of their skills and knowledge at reading level. And we have 2 texts per level to use as an evaluation. So this is another option to gather more data and to analyze their skills and their knowledge at text level. Now we have a little book and we can actually track along as they're reading and see what reading behaviors they're using, what letter sound correspondences are they using if they come to a word that they don't know, their blending skills, their sight word knowledge. So we use, like a running record, a tracking of their skills, but rather than analysing the, I think they call it MSV, we're actually analysing their phonic skills and their blending skills, and all of that can be learnt in the training of our Sparkle Kit. And finally, we've got our comprehension. Are they understanding what they're reading? That's really important as well. If a student is using too much cognitive load to decode every single word, that's okay, but we need to get them to automaticity here so that they can start hearing what they're reading and then understanding what they're reading. And we can evaluate their level of understanding and automaticity using these running records. Now finally, we can use this. This can be actually separate or it can be part of your full evaluation, and this is that oral reading fluency. We time them for just 1 minute, and on the back of the book, of their book, on level 1, it's just to see how many words that they can read in a minute to get their word fluency rate. Now in our upper levels, I'm just going to grab our level 4. You'll see on the back of the book, it's called Time to Shine. It's actually at text level. It's the letter sound correspondences that they know and have been taught, implemented at text level. And we give them a minute to have a read, and we can gain an understanding of their fluency rate, their oral reading fluency rate, because that will really tell us whether they are becoming a fluent reader at that level. This section here is where we add the data based on the reading record. So we can add things like our story prediction, our decoding, all the way to reading rate, which is our oral reading fluency. How many words per minute did they get accurate in that 1 minute time slot? And you can see here it automatically changes the cell that you enter the data based on whether they are competent, whether they're developing, or whether they are inadequate for the level. And from there, you can use that data and identify those students that require more fluency work based on not only their letter sound correspondence knowledge, but their word level reading. We need to pick those up and make them more automated in their word blending so that they can pick up their oral reading rate. Once you're starting to collect the right data based on skills and reading knowledge and identifying those gaps, analysing where those gaps are and responding to them, you need the right tools. Next week, we're going to explore how to respond to data using the most appropriate tools that we have here at Decodable Readers Australia. And these tools are going to help teachers with their explicit instruction as well as that cumulative practice for those students based on where those gaps lie. Now, before I go, I just want to mention one very important thing. Identifying gaps in student learning is really important for classroom practice. But if you suspect that there is an underlying disability or further difficulties, it's really important to seek external help. There are external agencies like speech pathologists, educational psychologists that we can go to do further testing and assessments. We need to make sure that we are getting these children on track and providing the best education that we can based on the knowledge of their learning skills.